WCY-TV, Truth Frequency Radio, and anywhere else this is broadcast, or recap, YouTube, etc. FBI Social Network. My new book, The Truth About Love, is available on Amazon on Kindle. It's very funny, I think psychologically true, and in some ways actually true. Some ways, not all. Some ways actually true. Story of a version of myself, fictionalized version of myself. Emphasizing the artist rather than the writer and researcher. Coming to terms with the fact that I'm not monogamous, but I am sensitive. So sensitive. The sensitive artist type. Let's look. Let's see. Oh, I pulled out the cord. Hold on. Let's just see if we can get back to this. I'll look up a review. Truth About Love, a novel about finding your more than one. I started reading the book and immediately was in awe of the rawness of his life that he was sharing in this latest work. We're getting the story of his own discovery, something from the male perspective and something very real. I wanted to keep reading to digest it all. I wanted to know more about what was going through his brain in each instance. I guess his is Will, the character, or maybe mine. I couldn't put the book down. I didn't want to. Reading how he loves, well, this would be Will. It reminds me of how I am loved and how I love. You don't have to understand, but I do encourage you to experience the experience of the reading. Carrie Lee, recipeforanarchy.com. Thank you very much for that warm, lovely review. It's extended at her blog, recipeforanarchy.com, which is a blog that I actually really like. I found some of the more intriguing moments in the book were the quiet back and forths between Will and Helen. Yeah, they would be. Through Scheff's beautiful, thank you, descriptions, I felt myself a welcomed voyeur sitting in their warm Boston apartment watching the almost waltz-like exchanges of kindness, Asian cooking, and friendship from April Bowden, my friend, writer, mom, supermom, autism mom, but supermom. Truth Heard Talk. Here's another one. This has got to be the most straightforward and honest book I've ever read, ever. Talk about keeping it real. This is a story that most people wouldn't have the balls to write, or the ovaries. This was a great read. Super Don Naylor, radio host. Thank you. There's some other reviews. I could go through the Amazon reviews. Here's a review from a person who didn't really like it. I gave it only 3 stars because of the subject matter. Well, I read the book. I don't understand. How do you criticize subject matter in a review? It's none of your... Don't review a book that you don't like. I didn't want to read it, but was curious about the male mentality. I guess I wasn't too disappointed. And there you go. There's a backhanded compliment, if ever there was one. So the book is there on Amazon. It's The Truth About Love, a novel about finding your more than one. It's $2.99 on Kindle. I'm readying the paperback version, which will be more expensive, much more expensive. But if you're a stickler for paperback, you'll be able to get one for $12 or $13 in about a month. Sometime in April. That sounds about right. I just have to polish and brush up a couple of things that can pass in a Kindle edit that will get sorted for a paper edit, and I have to make sure the files are correct, and the image and the cover is correct, and it has the ISBN on the back, and room for the UPC code because we're all slaves. We're going to talk about, on today's show, we're going to talk about blooms. Blooms and die-offs. Bloom is not a character from Joyce. Well, maybe Bloom is a character from Joyce. Bloom is not something that you give to somebody you love. Maybe it is. Bloom is not something that you do in spring. Maybe it's something you do all year long. But a bloom is what happens when a population comes upon a new food source and grows and grows and grows until it hits a very real wall, or a proverbial one. In any case, the numbers go back down to about what it was before the bloom. It's called a die back or a die off, and we'll talk about that. But I want to say this. I have to put in a word for myself. I like doing this work very much. I like being able to be a researcher and a writer. I'm working on another book right now. The book is called This Is All Temporary. I might make it available for, I don't know. I might make it available for pre-sale by April, or I might not. It depends. Amazon can sort of screw you up with that. But the book is about where we're headed, and where we're headed is die back, die off. I'm not pulling any punches, and I'm not offering you any hopeful solutions. I don't believe in that kind of thing. I understand the human species pretty well at this point, and hopeful solutions don't cut it. Just ask the Crusaders. Just ask the people inside of Constantinople each time it was being sacked. Sacked is a funny word. Each time it was being overrun by hordes trying to break in and steal their goods. Just ask any of the priests and prelates who ran the world through the Middle Ages if they ever just let their ethics or morality or their so-called belief in a so-called savior get in the way of them collecting money and screwing anybody that they wanted to. No, not really. People in power tend to stay in power. Power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. All great men are bad men, said Lord Acton. The human species doesn't like to get out of its own way, and it's not going to. We're a funny little water ape of some sort. We'll get into that too. We're a tool-making, storytelling, spiritual creature, and we don't ever say no to a good meal. Not really. Even if we're not hungry, we'll just keep it in mind for later. Like, can I eat in 20 minutes? Because I'm not hungry right now. Is 20 minutes okay? We're not going to stop. We're going to die back. Now, if you enjoy this sort of positive, uplifting experience, you're going to have to make it possible for me to do this work. You're going to have to go buy my books or put a little money into my PayPal account. I'm going to have to expand my ability to accept donations. It's not something I've really drummed on, but I'm just getting to the point where I'm deciding that this is what I do. I know that sounds funny, and I've never approached this as a dilettante. I sometimes have a bad commercial instinct. You know, I was more after the truth than I was after anything else. But this is what I do. So if you want to support me, you could put in $10 a month or $20 a month or $5 a month or $100 at once or whatever you would like or whatever you can afford to my PayPal account, which is listed on the front page of my website, which is there. Let's see, if I scroll down, it says Liam Scheff. Vaccines, Mercury and Autism, Listen Live, Donate. I see it right there on the side, Donate. And I'll have to make that publicly available in another way. So there it is, there's a Donate button, or you can just buy books from me if you want to buy more than 5 of any book, whether it's Official Stories or The Truth About Love when it comes out in paperback. More than 5, you can get them for $10 a piece, which includes, at this point, gas rates being what they are, which includes shipping, but that could change. You just have to contact me, put money in my PayPal account, covering, I think, $52 or something like that to account for the loss through PayPal. And send me your address, we'll correspond, and I'll send you the books. And you will not pay for shipping, so you'll save a significant amount of money. Or go buy the paperback or Kindle version of my book, Official Stories, which is 10 topics, 11 chapters, 10 topics. Although I'm irritated, somebody just wrote a review and said, it was a great read, but a little disjointed. It's not disjointed. It's 10 different topics, you idiot. Although I appreciate you saying it was a great read, it's not disjointed if it's intentionally 10 topics, and that's what they meant. It's not the same topic from chapter to chapter, but it's the same exercise in examining the official story, the magic bullet that we blame everything on. And, sorry, my head just let it go. It's been a little while since I actually wrote that book. So for every official story, we have the lone gunman who we say is responsible, the magic bullet, which is the physics-defying bit of logic or anti-logic that we say is responsible. So you can figure it out for JFK, 9/11. You can figure it out for HIV. It's always the tests for HIV. The tests are fraudulent. The drugs are real. AIDS drugs are quite real, and they will kill you. HIV tests are quite fake, and they won't tell you anything. So you can figure out how that works. That works in most of the virus hunters' theories. It's always like that. But what I'm saying is, if you like what I do, please support me. It's that straightforward and that simple. I'm going to keep doing this work. Excuse me, pardon me. Even if I have to take a job at Borders bookstore, which doesn't exist anymore, and you know how hard it can be to do that. I'll need a time traveling cloak. Speaking of time traveling cloaks, I recently made myself rewatch. Well, I don't really watch movies. I only listen to them because I find watching them redundant. I know what it sounds like. It just sounds like I've got like 20 kinds of Asperger's, but I don't. I just find watching them for the most part to be a distraction, probably from the script, and I'm probably listening to the script to see what it sounds like. Now, I understand there's some movies that you have to look at parts because they're paced visually, but most, whether you realize it or not, most things that happen in movies of any quality are still based Still based on dialogue. And yes, I just excluded all comic book movies because they're all pure jellyfish, which is what we're going to talk about today on the Liam Scheff Show. We're going to talk about jellyfish in the oceans. After you go buy a book, go buy The Truth About Love. It's $2.99. You'll laugh, and you'll laugh, and you might even get a little turned on and ask yourself what this monogamy thing is all about. Then go buy Official Stories. I think it's $4.99 or $5.99 on Kindle. It's very much worth your time. Now, that's the advertisement. I'm reading an article on QZ.com, which stands for Quartz. It's not a website that I know, but it's one that I suddenly like a little bit, for 2 articles that they've done. And this is what we're going to talk about for the rest of the show. In upcoming shows, we're going to talk about more. We're going to talk more about blooms and die-offs, and we're going to, we're all going to be in class together. I guess I'll be a teacher, but I'm a student too. I'll be transmitting the information as I come upon it, and so we will learn together. That's the goal, that we learn about these things. There's not much we can do about them except know. And perhaps by knowing we can get a little ahead of the breaking wave. Perhaps not. Perhaps we go out and enjoy our lives more for knowing what's coming rather than hiding from it. Perhaps we embrace things that we really want to do instead of waiting to collect a pension that will never come. Ever. Jellyfish are taking over the seas, and it might be too late to stop them. Take out the might. This is from last year. This is from October 2013, so the end of 2013, so it's a year and 4 or 5 months. Last week, October 2013, Sweden's, Oskarshamn nuclear power plant, we're in Sweden, Oskarshamn nuclear power plant, which supplies 10% of the country's energy. Pause and think about that for a moment. Had to shut down one of its 3 reactors after a jellyfish invasion clogged the piping of its cooling system. The invader, a creature called a moon jellyfish, is 95% water and has no brain. It sounds like a politician. Not what you might call menacing if you only had to deal with 1 or 2. En masse, jellyfish are a bigger problem. By the way, let me give the author of this credit because she deserves it. Gwyn Guilford for Quartz magazine. It's a good article, unlike 99% of the absolute used toilet paper that now passes for journalism. En masse, jellyfish, yeah. Fuck you, Huffington Post, all the way to hell. En masse, jellyfish are a bigger problem. The moon jellyfish swarm phenomenon, yeah, I said that. Jellyfish, yeah, I don't like them. They just report bullshit and crap, alright? I'm moving on. Occurs at regular intervals on Sweden's 3 nuclear power plants, says Torben Larsson, a spokesperson for E.ON, which owns Oskarshamn. Larsson wouldn't say how much, which is son of Lars, wouldn't say how much revenue the shutdown cost his company, the company he works for, but noted that jellyfish also caused a shutdown in 2005. It's not his company, he's a spokesperson, he's a puppet. Coastal areas around the world have struggled with similar jellyfish blooms. Why is it a bloom? She says now, that's why I like her, as these population explosions are known. It's a bloom. It opens, it becomes much wider than it was as a bud, right? Buds and blooms. So a population bloom, this is me now, a population bloom happens when the population moves from a very small, quite manageable number to an immensely unmanageable giant number. Let's think about any populations that we know that have bloomed as we continue on with this article. These blooms are increasing intensity, frequency, or duration, says Lucas Brotz, a jellyfish expert at the University of British Columbia. Hey there. Brotz's research of 45 major marine ecosystems shows that 62% of the ecosystems of the major ocean areas that he looked at saw an uptick in blooms since 1950. Now, I'll tell you why I like this writer. There's a PDF, and you can read it right here. It's attached. In those areas, surging jellyfish numbers have caused power plant outages, destroyed fisheries, and cluttered the beaches of holiday destinations. Boo-hoo-hoo, you say. Well, it's a big deal. Scientists can't be certain that blooms are rising because historical data are too few. Well, I think that that's not true. The proliferation of jellyfish appears in large part to be related to humans' impact on the oceans. Now, I'm talking, the overarching theme here for this show and probably the next 5 is die off and die back, because this is where we're headed. So we're now talking about human impact on the ocean, reading from an article in Quartz magazine by Gwen Guilford. Thank you, Gwen, or Gwen. The toll we take on the seas may augur, foretell, an augury. An augury has to do with birds, letting out birds. It's what the Romans did to tell whether things were in favor or not. They let these birds. They read the auguries. I believe that's what it is. The toll we take on the seas may augur a new world order of jellyfish disasters, which in turn could devastate the global economy. Good. Fuck the global economy. Fuck it all the way to hell. What has the global economy ever done for the globe? What has the global economy, and this is not her, this is me. What has the global economy ever done for the global ecology? Fuck the global economy. Fuck it all the way to hell. Right there with the Huffington Post. And Fox News. The blight of the jellyfish. Oscar Schemm-like disturbances are happening all over the world. Throngs of jellyfish have disrupted power generation elsewhere from Muscat, I believe that's Russia, I'm not sure, to Maryland, from South Korea to Scotland. These things are worse than the fishing business, where blooms have wiped out billions of dollars in earnings over the last few decades. Who cares? We've wiped out every bloody fish species in the ocean down to tiny numbers. They're also a nightmare for fishermen who must contend with bursted nets and clogged trawl lines. Japan's now annual bloom of Nomura jellyfish, which each grow to be the size of a large refrigerator, 450 pounds, 500 pounds, capsized and sank a 10-ton, 20,000-pound trawler when the fishermen tried to haul up a net full of them. Tourism has taken a hit, too. This summer, a pile-up of 1 million jellyfish along 186 miles of Mediterranean coastline shortened the swimming season for hundreds of thousands of tourists on beach holidays. Oh, what are we going to do? Well, there's jellyfish in the water. I don't know. Let's go back to the pub. All right. Some 150... was ist das hier? Haben wir machen sollen? Some 150,000 people are now treated for jellyfish stings in the Mediterranean each summer. 150,000 jellyfish stings. The box jellyfish, the deadliest creature on the planet. Those swimmers are getting off easy, though. Residents of Australia and Southeast Asia share shores with the dread box jellyfish. The dread box jellyfish. Whose sting is the most explosive envenomation process presently known to humans, says a team of scientists. Venom injected from its 10-foot-long tentacles turns the tissue into soup, as one marine biologist put it, and causes the heart to seize. Death usually occurs within 4 minutes. In the Philippines each year, between 20 and 40 people die from box jellyfish stings. Low on the mortality number. Significant, though, when you consider the numbers are increasing, and it's the oceans, and it can happen to anybody who's swimming. Still, numbers are small, but I'm not going in the ocean. Then there's the irukanji, the box jellyfish's diminutive cousin, not much larger by this image than 2 match heads. The irukanji has mastered the closest thing to the perfect murder in the animal kingdom. Isn't there a police song about that? Murder by numbers. Remember that? Usually the size of a sugar cube. Say you're singing it in your head. 1, 2, 3. It's as easy to do as your ABCs. Usually the size of a sugar cube, the iru kanji is hard to see, and its stinger leaves no trace. Around 10 minutes after contact, bloody hell, victims suffer everything from excruciating lower back pain to incessant vomiting to constricted airways, and the creeping skin frequently associated with methamphetamine usage. Unlucky victims sometimes succumb to brain hemorrhaging, extreme high blood pressure, or in 30% of cases experience some form of heart failure, says Scientific American. Not always reputable. But I'll trust them on this because they're not measuring anything the government did. Fuck you, Scientific American. Fuck you. That's for 9/11. And 1 out of 5 victims ends up on life support. It's difficult to know how many victims the irukanji have claimed, writes biologist Tim Flannery in his related piece at NewYorkBooks.com, since many deaths have doubtless been put down to stroke, heart attack, or drowning. I'm reading from QuartzQZ.com, an article by Gwen Guilford, very good article, which is why I'm reading it. Australia is known for its menagerie of lethal beasts, But now both types of jellyfish are found in Florida. Hey, kids! Let's go swimming, Mickey! And elsewhere. 6 Bach jellyfish nearly killed endurance swimmer Chloe McCardle last June. She miraculously survived despite having sucked a spaghetti-like tentacle into her mouth. Reports of stinging now come from India, Cape Town, and even Wales. An eating reproducing machine that's almost impossible to kill. No one's sure how the box jellyfish in the Irukandji are spreading. I am. They live in the ocean. Jellyfish species are turning up in new habitats every year. It's a big, giant sea, everybody. What's the big mystery? There are currents that go all over. There are boats going everywhere. They're turning up in new habitats every year and thriving. That's probably because, from an evolutionary standpoint, jellyfish are biologically primed to swarm the seas. Here's why. They have few predators. The ones they do have include sea turtles, which we've killed, salmon, which we're killing, mackerel, which we've killed, and albatross. Animals that are increasingly scarce. And of course, when they're transported to new ecosystems, jellyfish often have no natural predators, just like man. We've combined all the most dangerous, evil animals in all the world into one super animal. Surprise, it's a human. They're eating. Thank you, Futurama. They're eating machines. The comb jellyfish, which wiped out the Black Sea's $350 million fishing industry, can put away 10 times its body weight in food in a single day. What are they, Walmart shoppers? Sorry. What are they, Walmart shoppers? There, we'll go with that one. This is even though it needs to eat only 16% of its body weight to keep growing. It can eat 10 times its body weight, which is 1,000% of its body weight in a single day. 1,000%. It only needs to eat 16% of its body weight. It can eat 1,000. The rest of that food goes toward making it bigger. Not just bigger, but bigger and bigger. They play dirty against competitors. Not only do jellyfish compete with smaller fish for the same food, but they also eat those fish's eggs. That collapses fish populations, causes fish populations to collapse. They're world-class proliferators. Jellyfish don't have baby versions of themselves the way most animals do. They create polyps, little bundles of clones that attach to hard surfaces and wait for their opportunity to release small jellyfish. Actually, they stack up like little coins. They do. They stack up like little coins. You wouldn't even know what they are. There's a little stack of coins, and they pop off when there's enough, when the environment is right. However, while they're waiting, polyps clone themselves, creating more bundles of future baby jellyfish. Hey! It's like we've created an ocean full of cancer. They're almost invincible. One reason jellyfish blooms are so disastrous is they're almost impossible to get rid of. In fact, cutting some species open actually creates exponentially more of them. What's the song? Sorcerer's Apprentice song? I can't recall it. I'll have to look it up. But anyway, that would be good to play right now. No, that's not it. That's like Andy of Mayberry. I can't remember. Oh my God. What's the Sorcerer's Apprentice song? Dun 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 dun, right? Bree 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 dun 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 bree bree. Stop it, Liam. When the cell of one species named the named the Benjamin Button jellyfish are released through post-mortem decomposition. Okay, here, get this. When one of these jellyfish dies, its cells degrade, but some of the cells find each other and start over and make a new polyp. I'm not kidding. Pretty cool. Pretty zombie-like. What are they, Walmart shoppers? Why is this happening now? They may have... don't use this word. All right, I'm taking you from an A to an A- for this. They may have gamed evolution. Fuck you. It's not a... In written human history, jelly blooms have never before infested the seas. So why now? Duh. Why now? BP oil spill, oil spills everywhere. How about radioactive material flowing into the oceans, killing everything else? How about overfishing? What about simple overfishing? Throughout history, the intricate lattice of ocean life has kept jellyfish in check. Thanks to overfishing, pollution, and other factors, though. Is this the mystery? Jellyfish populations are exploding into superabundances and exploiting these changes in ways that we could never have imagined, except people, who said this isn't going to work out for you, like anybody who was paying attention. and in some cases driving them, explains biologist Lisa Ann Gershwin in her brilliant book Stung on jellyfish blooms and the future of the ocean. Both a fascinating book. I'm not going to say, people say a fascinating read. No, it's a book. Reading is something you do. It's not a noun. Both a fascinating book and a crucial reference for this story. Here's an illustration of some of those effects explained in more detail below. Dismantling the food chain. Overfishing creates more opportunity for jellyfish to feed and breed. The plundering of, say, salmon removes one of the jellyfish's few predators. Without a curb on their population, growing hordes of jellyfish start eating the eggs of smaller fish as well as their food supply. J-dogs also wreak havoc on the food chain when they're introduced to new ecosystems, usually via ballast water that shipping tankers take on and release as counterbalance to cargo. In other words, we now figured out the first part. Why do they travel all over the world? Because big boats travel all over carrying plastic crap from China and oil from the Philippines and whatever from Africa to everywhere else. They suck up ocean water and then they dump it out when they land. Oh, come on. What is that? Fucking god damn it, how straightforward can we be? Outlasting everything else. Other contributors to the jellyfish bloom are the dead zones created by what scientists call eutrophication. That's murder of the ocean bottom. Farming pesticides and sewage pumped into rivers meet the ocean, dead zones. This affects plankton, teeny aquatic plants that are dinner buffet for a vast number of sea creatures. Normally these little phytoplankton live on nutrients from chemicals in the seabed releases, but their populations explode when doped on nitrogen and phosphorus, forming algal blooms like the one near Qingdao, China. Sorry about that Chinese. Qingdao! The whole food chain starts chowing down, another minus there, I don't like that expression, creating more excrement and more dead creatures. These float to the bottom, stripping the water of oxygen. Since most creatures can't survive in areas with little oxygen, their numbers fall. But, hey! Not jellyfish. Hey, come on, Mother Nature. You're not going to let a void just go remain empty? Of course not. What are we? How stupid are we? There's no needed explanation. Oh, we're out of time. You're listening to the Liam Scheff Show on Truth Frequency Radio and UCY TV. And we're back from a non-break. Let's just keep going. Sorry, I overran the Truth Frequency break, but we're going to keep going until we hit the half-hour mark. Then we will break, and I will come right back. The whole food chain starts eating, da-da-da. Scientists think dead zones are behind the surge in Nomura jellyfish in Japan. The best examples come from China, where pollution from the Yangtze River in western China has formed huge dead zones in the East China and Yellow Seas. They don't need much oxygen. They don't mind the garbage. Get it? So, the ocean will be a thick, sludgy, poisonous mass. That's where we're headed with the ocean. No more fish for everybody. No more fish for everybody. Humans are also helping jellyfish reproduce. Polyps, those clone sacs that churn out baby jellyfish, are key to their ability to bloom in such incredible rapid fashion and shocking numbers, writes the author of that book called Stung, something Gershwin, Lisa, I think. A few centuries ago, the hard surfaces available for polyps to cling to included mainly seabed rocks and oyster shells. Those polyps that couldn't find such surfaces couldn't clone. But, hey, we've built stuff in the oceans, human structures, piers, drilling platforms, plastic cigarette packets, garbage, plastic floating in the ocean, offshore wind turbines, small, there aren't that many of them, boats, so many boats, big boats, half mile long. Those are just a few of the new surfaces polyps can cling to. Big blooms, concludes the author, may be the new normal. Humans may eventually act to reverse, no they won't, to reverse the bloom in jellyfish blooms, boom. No they won't. But as the research of Lisa Gershwin, Bratz, and other scientists suggests, careful work, those efforts may not work. No, they're not going to work. The peculiar biology of jellyfish means that once their numbers surge, the tide may be impossible to turn. Thank you. I'm reading from an article from Quartz Magazine by Gwynn Guilford, A-, or B++. I'm going to give it an A-, because it was a good article. I just didn't like a couple of the word choices, but it was much better than most of the crap you read on the web, because it didn't play a lot of games and didn't tell us we were going to fix the problem by buying a new kind of electric car. F you and your electric cars, honestly. That doesn't make a difference. Not an iota. This is the Liam Scheff Show. We're going to be right back with the Liam Scheff Show. Thanks for listening. We're back on the Liam Scheff Show on Truth Frequency Radio. Sorry about overrunning that last break. And UCY TV. Hi. Last segment we looked at the problem of jellyfish taking over the ocean because of us. Because of us killing the sardine fisheries and every other fishery and putting pollution everywhere and making it a prime low oxygen, terrible, polluted atmosphere, nitrogen-rich atmosphere for jellyfish to live in. Yes, we're going to destroy ourselves. No, there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing. I want to look through another article on this same website, quartzqz.com. First, a word about our sponsor. The sponsor is Liam Scheff. You can buy my books at Amazon.com and CreateSpace. I'm going to be working to make them available in other places and in other digital formats soon, but it all takes time, focus, and energy, and I'm busy writing my next book. I'm finishing an edit for the paperback of The Truth About Love, which I hope that you'll look at. It's a very fun book. Official Stories is out and is still eminently readable, and we'll catch you up to where we are in the 21st century. All right. Let's look at this article by Roberto A. Ferdman. A. Ferdman? Yes, he is. That's what it says right here. Roberto A. Ferdman. 5 gruesome truths about the sorry state of the global food industry, dating again from October 2013. Oh, sorry. I mean, I'm slow, I guess. Wednesday, October 16th is World Food Day, a day marked by the United Nations world-class murderers to hey, vaccine programs aren't murder, they're just poisoning. And sometimes people die. To highlight the obstacles, I know if you're new to the show or new to the concept, you don't understand that, but you go inject yourself with a little thimerosal and let me know how it goes. To highlight the obstacles facing the global food industry. Hey, global food industry, go fuck yourselves. It's really the global petroleum food industry, as well as the most viable solutions for surmounting them. They will not be surmounted. The topic of this year's discussion centers around sustainability, specifically how efficient, well-managed, and sustainable food systems can help alleviate global hunger and malnutrition. They won't. There are, however, a slew of truths, thank you, Roberto, and this is why we're reading this, about today's unsustainable global food industry, which, if not holistically addressed, will put, he says potentially, I'm taking that word out, will put catastrophic strains, no, will break us. There are many dire realities about the sorry state of global food production, distribution, and dissemination. I know what that sounded like. I'm not going to repeat it. For instance, over 1 billion people are still underfed. That number is about to go way up. But the lesser-known realities are equally eyebrow-raising, stomach-turning, and deserving of attention. Number 1, we consume less than 1/3 of the food we produce. The world currently produces enough calories to overfeed every human being, about 27 calories per head per day, and yet the world as a whole is underfed. The reality is, in no small part due to the overwhelming inefficiency of our global food production and consumption, 1/3 of the food we produce is used to feed animals. Now, I'm not talking about Burger King denizens or people who go to McDonald's. That's not very nice. I'm not talking about football fans. I mean animals. Another 1/3 is wasted, and roughly 5% is used to produce biofuels. Yeah, that's all a waste. 5% biofuels is a waste. Wasted as in they go spoil or they throw it away or burn it to keep markets in check is, also a waste. A third of the food we produce is used to feed animals. 1/3. To feed large animals. Now, a cow requires, 2,500 gallons of water and 20 pounds, 16 to 20 pounds of grain, beans, or other food to produce 1 edible pound of bloody flesh. In what way does that make sense? It doesn't. It should have been stopped decades ago. That's why I became a vegetarian, by the way. Those numbers alone. Just the idea that we would take all of this food that people can eat, beans, grains, whatever you want to feed them, and shove it into these cows, which don't want to eat this stuff anyway, give them diseases, and then eat them at a loss of 20 to 1? Why? Our water scarcity problem isn't just about geography. Roughly a fifth of the world lives in areas suffering from physical water scarcity. I'm not fond of this mealy-mouthed sort of UN talk, roughly physical water scarcity. In other words, we're running out of water. Another 500 million are quickly approaching water scarcity. But that's only half of it. 1.6 billion people approximately live in countries with insufficient water infrastructure, or in what's referred to as economic water scarcity. So you got physical water scarcity and economic water scarcity. Well, guess what? All of the Western United States has physical water scarcity, or is approaching it rapidly. No, they have it. And I don't know why it's not on this map, California. That's because they steal their water from the north, but that's stolen water and that's running low too. In terms of access, what they call access, clean water sewage systems, most of Africa doesn't have that. A lot of India doesn't have it. Parts of China don't have it. When we didn't have it, we had all the diseases of the 20th century that went away when we put in sewage systems. It wasn't vaccination, it was sewage systems. Asshole scientists. Asshole propagandists. It wasn't vaccinations, it was sewage systems. Go look at the charts. You can figure out when the diseases went away and when vaccination was introduced. The diseases went away when sewage systems were put in. What's more, water use has been growing at more than twice the rate of population growth for over a century. Water use has been growing at more than twice the rate of population growth. Why? By 2030, here's a projection, so we don't know if it's true. A mere 16 years from now, at the time of the article, global water demand is expected to exceed supply by 40%. In other words, we're not going to get there. That doesn't make sense. Global demand cannot exceed supply. Our obsession with meat is costing the earth dearly. Not long ago, meat was a luxury consumed by a few. Now it's eaten by most of the world's population. Well, that's not true. It's not eaten by most of the world's population. It's eaten by the Western world's population, minus one giant point. The livestock industry accounts for 30% of the planet's land. Some think that's an underestimate. Roughly 15% of world... Oh, fuck you and your carbon emissions. Roughly 15% of the world's carbon emissions stem from the meat industry. Don't care. The worst offender by far is the cattle industry. The beef and dairy industries alone account for a tenth of global emissions. So don't care. I don't care about your fake global CO2 emissions. What they do is they put nitrogen into water. They fill giant lagoons and lakes and rivers full of feces. And they kill all life in it. They kill all life in the water. Nitrogen kills life in water and makes it possible to have what we talked about in the beginning, jellyfish blooms. So you can shove your farting cows up your ass. Nobody's going to stop doing anything because of that. But you're putting 20 pounds of, fucking liberals, you're putting 20 pounds of grain into one animal to produce 1 pound of edible meat, and you pat yourself on the head and tell yourself you deserve it. Well, you don't. Nobody does. You don't need it. It's ridiculous. Eat small animals. You want to eat animals, eat guinea pigs. Be like a South American. Eat rabbits and guinea pigs. Eat small animals. Our reliance on animals is the problem. As for food is the problem. That's going to make us run out of food. It's why we're overwatering Monsanto land. We're not eating those soybeans that we grow in Monsanto land. We're stuffing them into cows. Knock it off. I mean, I don't know why there's not an Earth First to take care of this thing. Free all those cows or slaughter them all at once and have a giant... And why don't we just have a giant barbecue all at once? Vegans, non-vegans alike. We'll just go eat all the cows in the world except for a sustainable numbering in the millions, not the hundreds of millions, or whatever the numbers are. That sounds about right. And we'll all have one big day where we eat too much steak. Half the people have heart attacks by the end of the day. Good, there are too many people anyway. And yeah, fine, quote me. And then we'll be out of the problem of trying to raise cows as a primary food source. Why would we raise the slow-moving herbivore, stuffing it with grain and beans as a primary food source? And what... God, we're stupid. Obesity isn't a problem. It's an epidemic. It's a problem. What began in the U.S. has overtaken the globe. Nearly 15% of the world isn't just overweight, but obese. Well, let me tell you something. Soylent Green may be people, but it's not that bad. The disease, yes, it's a disease. Shut up. I like this article a lot less than I like the other article. It's not a disease. Obesity isn't a disease. It's a life. That's a lifestyle choice. Homosexuality is not a disease or a lifestyle choice. That's natural. But obesity is a lifestyle choice. You don't want to eat the sugar, don't eat the sugar. It's a choice. Don't eat the pixie sticks. Don't eat everything that has sugar in it and you're not paying attention. It's all sugar. Sugar, pesticides, GMOs, glyphosate. Stop eating that shit. And I know that it's impossible to stop eating it. I know it's in everything, but try and avoid most of it and you won't be obese anymore. When measuring the percentage of the populations that are both obese and overweight, the numbers are overwhelming, says the writer. Why don't you let me come to that conclusion? This is not as good a thinker as the previous one, Roberto. In the U.S., some 70% of people are obese or overweight. 70% of the U.S. is obese or overweight. In Latin America and Europe, 60%. Well, Latin America and Europe is very, very, very different. Latin America includes a lot of westernized capitals who have terrible, terrible diets, and Europe's very different. I don't think Europe is 60% overweight. The current course is both costly and unsustainable. Blah, blah, blah. Non-communicable diseases of which overweight and obese are leading risk factors. No, shut up. It's not a disease. It's a lifestyle choice. I mean, it will make you sick and it will cause disease, but that's different. Okay. Food consumption has exceeded food production for 5 of the last 10 years, and it appears to have caught up with us. World grain reserves haven't been this low since 1974, when the population was in the 3 million. I mean, half of what it is now. Bloody hell! With a healthy level of reserves to fall back on, the world is woefully unprepared for any and all unexpected bouts of severe weather. Meager harvests by any, and that's, give the global warming people something. Harvests are being affected around the world. Now, all the global warming people come out and see Liam, sure, fine. Global temperature change, fine. You're not going to get anywhere talking about that. It doesn't really matter. If you're not going to make sense to people and explain that you can either feed everybody or you can feed 3 people, and everybody else, 97 people out of 100, are going to come back and try to kill those 3 people for eating the cows, and at that point the land is already Monsanto land and broken, etc., etc. Nobody's going to give much of a damn. You just make some economic sense. Meager harvest by any of the world's main exporters of grain, which include corn, GMO, wheat, sprayed, and rice, could leave significant portions of the earth without enough food. Yeah, no shit. We're not supposed to be in a global web of food. We're supposed to be producing food locally. Africa's supposed to be producing millet. South America's supposed to be producing corn and quinoa. North America's supposed to be producing corn and wheat and barley and oats. All over the place, not just one place. And we're supposed to be producing heirloom Gesundheit, heirloom varieties. Heirloom varieties. Not these inbred Monsanto Franken bullshit strains. Anyway, correction, an earlier version of this article stated that cattle occupy about a quarter of the planet's land. This was corrected to say that the livestock industry accounts for 30% of land. And by land, they better not mean land mass. They better mean arable land that you can graze on, because some of it, you can't talk about. Well, who knows what they mean. So, 2 articles from QZ, quartz.com, QZ.com. The first one was, I think, a little more interesting, about the jellies, the jelly belly fish. Jellyfish are taking over the seas, and it might be too late to stop them. This is Liam Scheff. You're listening to the Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV, Truth Frequency Radio, on YouTube, anywhere else that it's streaming or plunking. Our population is about to crash. We're going to be crashing, coming over the hump and crashing. Maybe we'll make it to 8 billion in the next 10, 15, 12, 15 years. And then we come down. I don't know that we can... yeah. We're not going to be able to outdo it, outmaneuver it. We've entered a bloom. Let's talk about population blooms. Let's read about reindeer. You've heard this story before, haven't you? Have you heard this? I've never talked about this, but you might have heard it because it's a well-known bit of die-off politics. there's a curve. It goes up from a very, very, very low number of 29 up to 6,000, and it plummets within about a year or two down to 42. So from 30 to 6,000, was that 2,000%? And then down, or is that 20,000? 2,000%. And then down to 42, which is just about back to where it was. Okay. In 1944, a breed of reindeer was introduced to St. Matthew's Island, which is a 100-something square mile island located off of Alaska in the Bering Sea Wildlife Refuge, because U.S. military were stationed there to deal with, I don't know what, submarines. And they needed to have some food there that would just be wild food that they could hunt. So they put some reindeer there. Well, the war ended and they left the reindeer. And the reindeer increased from 29 animals to about 6,000 20 years later. Less than 20 years later, by 1963. And in 1 year, died back to fewer than 50 animals. How did they increase from 29 in 20 years, from 29 to 6,000, and then drop back down to 40-something in 1 year? Well, it was a very bad winter that year, 61-2, and they had trouble getting, 62, I guess, trouble getting to their food. Their food were wild lichen growing on trees and rocks. Apparently the winter was very bad and made it difficult, and the bad winter and the hard snow made it difficult for them to get to their food. But they had actually overgrazed their food. Bacteria do the same thing. These examples have been used by writers talking about die-off for a long time. But you haven't heard them, or if you have, you can hear them again. Bacteria in a petri dish, putting them in a solution of sugar, which they'll eat, will eat that sugar and they'll double every couple of minutes or whatever their life cycle is. And they'll keep doubling and doubling and doubling. And they'll double and double and double. Let's say they double every hour. Well, they'll keep doubling and they'll move from a tiny portion of the dish and then they'll occupy a larger, and then suddenly they're up to half the dish, and then they'll double again over that next hour, and then suddenly they fill the whole dish. Well, they can double again and they can actually pile higher. But the question is, how much sugar solution that they eat is left in the dish? That energy source is going to determine whether they're going to survive or not. And eventually that energy source will run out, and the bacteria will die back. And there'll be mostly dead bacteria in a dish with a few live ones, eating the remaining little bits of food and doubling, but very slowly because there are very few of them. And then they'll run out of food and they'll die, and that will be that. And if you put in more food, they'll double again. And the whole thing could happen again. But you're putting in the food. Nobody could go back to the island and put lichen all over the place so that the reindeer could have the food that they were, that they ate, so that it could become a huge population, an untenable population all over the island. Nobody could go back and feed them, or I suppose people could have, but they weren't paying attention. There was no reason to. So the reindeer had a die-off, a die-back. The human population used to double, according to the researchers and their estimates, about every 32,000 years. Or at least that was the perceived rate of doubling. And the human population seemed to move from somewhere around 5 billion and, hundreds of thousands of years, 5 million, hundreds of thousands years ago to worldwide. The population all around the world. We're talking in the low millions, which is now what you have on just part of Manhattan. That's the whole worldwide population, just low millions. And it stayed that way. And then, crept up by the beginning of the ADs to a few hundred million. Significant, but we had cities, we had stable cities for a long time. So, 10,000 BC, maybe 4 million, 8,000, maybe 5 million. 0, maybe 170 million. Middle Ages, around 300 million, holding steady. Slowly, slowly, slowly increasing. And then it shoots upward, like a letter I, just standing straight upward, just going from a nothing to a 90-degree angle and shooting up, almost straight up. So by 1800, we had a little less, by estimates, than 1 billion, which is, so we're moving from millions to tens of millions to a few hundred million, holding steady at a few hundred million until we get 1,000 million, which is 1 billion. Few hundred million, 400 million, 450 million, 500 million, 500. I mean, we're talking centuries going by, centuries. And so by the 1800, after years of American expansion into the New World, into South America, from Europe, the stabilization of large cities in Europe over centuries, population almost hits 1 billion, almost 1 billion. It took another 100 years for that to become 1.5 billion. Add another 500 million. And remember, the world had sort of stayed steady at 300 or 400 million for centuries, thousands of years. But then in 100-year period, they added another 500 million, like it was nothing. Like bacteria in a dish, doubling. Well, then from 1900 at 1.5 billion to 2000, we went up from 1.5 to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we were over 6 billion. Over 6 billion people, by estimates, in 2000. And then by 2012, we were over 7. It took... The world rocked steady at about 300 million to 500 million for centuries, for millennia, for thousands of years. It stayed steady before that at low numbers, 100 million, 50 million, for centuries. And for the majority of our time on the planet, we were somewhere between 5 and, 15 million, all around the world. That's a lot of people. You don't know 15 million people. But now, we're over 7 billion people. How did that happen? It happened because somebody put sugar in our petri dish. Somebody put lichen on our island. Well, that lichen aren't going to last forever. So what are the lichen that got added? You already know the answer. You listened to this show before. If you don't know the answer to what is your food made of, where does it come from? Your food comes from the grocery store. It doesn't even come from a field. It comes from a box. You open the box, there's some sort of plastic in it. You open the plastic, there's some sort of thing in there. The thing smells sweet. It has layers. One of them is chocolate. Then there's some sort of spongy thing, and you eat that, and there's some sort of white cream in the middle. Your food comes in packages. It comes in a frozen package. You open it. There's some sort of plastic container. You put it in a deadly device called a microwave. You heat it. It smells like something. You eat it. It tastes like something. You're not sure what it is. You don't feel quite well afterward, but anyway, you get on with your day. Where does that food come from? That food is not food. That food was food. It was a variety of vegetable, plant, and animal fats and proteins. These had genetically modified ingredients added to them, or they were composed of genetically modified ingredients. They were taken apart in a food laboratory and resynthesized into a variety of things, sometimes some version of noodles or cut up bits of animal flesh, and then cooked in some giant laboratory kitchen and then frozen. Then wrapped in another layer of plastic and had a plastic seal put on top of it, and then put into a box that has colorful images on it that are made out of petroleum-based inks, or maybe soy-based inks, sprayed with machines that run on petroleum and coal electricity and nuclear electricity, and put in giant trucks that run on petroleum, diesel, and then driven 1,000 miles so that they can be in your local Walmart where you go and buy them. Our food is really oil. Our sugar in the petri dish is oil. Oil is what made the population grow. Oil and coal from 1800 coal from 1800 to maybe 1870, but then oil. And so you see the slower population increase from 1800 to 1900 to 500 million, to the rapid population increase from 1.5 billion to 6 billion during the 20th century, the 1900s. That is the era where oil was used to make food, to ship food, to grow food, to procure food, etc., etc., etc. That is where we live. And we cannot help but to realize that we are on the cusp of a die-off. If you don't realize that, I'm telling you right now, we're on the cusp of a die-off. And when it's happening, you'll hear news reports. People who talk about die-offs don't often talk about how they'll happen. So I will tell you how they'll happen. Not just on this show, but on this show and the next show and the next show. I will tell you how it's going to happen. Starvation comes in on news reports. Oil decline comes in on news reports as rolling power outages. When there are rolling power outages through the Midwest in the coldest nights of winter, 10,000 people at a stroke don't wake up. They freeze to death in the middle of the night. They're not even aware of it. They're just cold, and they pass out. And they freeze. In the hot summer, in high-rises, in downtowns, people go to bed and they wake up with a fever and they're too tired and exhausted to get any water, and that happens for 2 days and they expire. In the South, it happens all summer long. In the Southwest, it happens all summer long. News reports come in, 10,000 people at a stroke, dead. There were no guns, there were no vaccines, there were no bullets, there were no FEMA camps. It's just the weather. We're protected against the weather by electricity, by air conditioning and heating, by oil and gas. When there are interruptions in those things, people will die in large groups. It won't be dramatic. It won't be the movie version. There'll be no aliens coming out of the sky. This is the Liam Scheff Show on True Frequency Radio. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week. And we're still here on UCY TV, talking about die-offs, blooms, and the population bloom and bust of the United States and the world. The world is now totally dependent on Monsanto land crops. The exceptions are parts of Africa, India, and China, which are still procuring their own food locally, and those places will survive. We won't. If you live on a big farm and you do some hand farming, you might survive. If you have a group around you who you can bring in to do the work and the labor, you might survive. People living in cities, if you're going to be reliant on food coming in rurally when there are these power interruptions, oil interruptions, you're going to run out of that city and you're going to try to find a commune to work at and work on. You're going to look for land to work, and you're going to offer yourself essentially as a serf. Can I stay here, sleep here, live here, and work the land so that I have food? It's going to be quick. And by quick, I mean, a few decades of this. There'll be early adopters who don't want to have it, be under the gun. And I might be one of those early adopters who's looking for land to work, places to work the land. But the majority of people just won't make it. The cities will die. There'll be violent episodes, but that'll be a relatively short period. People look at these prison planet things as though that's a long thing. It's not a long-term project, the Gulag. I mean, it might seem long in a human lifetime, but there will be work camps. State governments will form work camps, and you will go and you will work and you will grow potatoes and raise whatever little animals you can find and grow turnips and cabbage and try to grow grain, which is hard to grow. And you'll be happy to have food, and happy to have heat, and happy to have each other, and you'll have lice, and you'll have other problems, and that'll be that. And if you wonder why I'm talking about it because that's where we're going. So I'm recommending that you get out of the habit of waiting for bad things to happen, and you start growing food now. And if you think I'm trying to scare you a little bit, I'm just trying to wake myself up most of all, so that I don't think that I have forever either. That's all. We've got to grow food. We really have to be growing food. You're listening to The Liam Scheff Show on UCY TV, Truth Frequency Radio. Please buy my book, Official Stories, and support independent research. Thank you very much for listening. See you next week. Stay well, and don't wait forever to live the life that you want to live.